Hello, I'm Chandu Nair, handling the course on marketing management. We are now going to talk about global marketing. The world today is global. A lot of people talk about the world being a global village. There's a famous book written by Thomas Friedman saying the world is flat, alluding to the fact that virtually everything is like one big homogeneous market. But is it really so? Let's look at what this topic, global marketing, covers. What we are trying to figure out here is what exactly is meant by global marketing, what is the importance and scope of global marketing, how to differentiate between global marketing and domestic marketing, and why we might want to go global, and finally what kind of decisions one has to take while going in for global marketing. Please remember that trade has been one of the oldest professions, and so therefore marketing across boundaries, across geographies is not something new. If you look at India, India has had a long history of trade with, for example, the Arab countries. So it's not something new, but there are different words that have been used, trade, export marketing, transnational marketing, international marketing, so on and so forth. But it's only in the last couple of decades or so that the word global marketing, the phrase global marketing has come into play. So one must understand that over the last several years, especially in the last 20 years, there has been a tremendous amount of change. You yourself would have seen over the last several years that the level of change, for example, the internet, which barely existed about 20 odd years ago, is today there in various aspects of our life, especially if you are in an urban Indian city or you're a student or you're a professional. You can't avoid some influence of the internet in your life. Telecom has also transformed. Mobile phones barely were there 20 years ago. Today, I don't think many of us can imagine a world without mobile phones. So if you look at it, there is a rapid pace of change. That's one. Second, there are more and more opportunities for exporters and global marketers. Third, you also have the threat from overseas competition even in your own domestic markets. In several product categories, there's a bunch of new competition. You take consumer durables, for instance. Certain companies in televisions like Dianora or Solidaire so no longer exist in India. On the other hand, South Korean companies like LG and Samsung have made headway, significant headway, and are very large players. So you find a lot of them in different product categories taking over in some cases the local manufacturers. Today cell phone companies, if you look, the ones which are dominating are some global names like Vodafone. Some others like Uninor are still struggling. The other very interesting thing is that there seems to be a convergence of cultures and economies in many cases. If you take some pockets of urban India, there is an orientation towards American Hollywood movies, American fast food like McDonald's or KFC, or you also find American serials and television shows. And the kind of music also a lot of people are listening to is very Western in orientation. So if you look at it, this kind of a crowd is not just there, maybe smaller in India, but they are similar. You find similar segments in different parts of the world, and therefore, when you look at segmentation too, you find them across different geographies, not just in your own home country. Now, there are several macroeconomic reasons for globalization. It's important we understand that. One is the fact that over the last several years, many countries have got together to remove, under the auspices of the global agreement of trade and tariffs and other things, they got together to remove various kinds of tariff barriers. There are still a lot of them. There are still non-tariff barriers which are there, but a lot of barriers have been removed. Secondly, people want to use and exploit comparative cost advantages. Companies in China especially have used lower prices based on a huge amount of government support and lower costs of production within their home country to advantage in several areas. Even if you take in India today, many of even the religious idols are coming in from countries like China. Locks, I don't think you will find locks made in India except maybe a Godrej and still a handful of fellows from Aligarh. You will find bulk of them are actually from China. There's also the issue of increasing incomes. Countries like India have seen a significant rise absolutely and even in percentage terms of those in the middle class who are also the consuming class. So therefore that means that they need more imported stuff, maybe just from necessity they move on to more luxury kind of items, and there are also some of them moving to more emerging kind of items. And like we saw earlier, there is also in some cases a homogenization of market segments, similar characteristics irrespective of geography, which allows you to sell the same product across the board. You also find in India today products made in India like the i20 or the i10 from Hyundai or the Figo from Ford cars being exported to say Europe, because there are similar customers over there as well. Now, why should we as marketers, as producers, even think of going global? One, there are maybe certain product categories which have reached a certain life cycle in our markets, but it's possible that they have a kind of a new lease of life in newer markets. And it's happened in several product categories. Products which were used say earlier in certain markets actually start finding new applications or same applications in other markets. Second, maybe the fact that domestic markets may be saturated. Here, you might also take the example of somebody like Foster's, which is from Australia. Very significantly, that brand of beer is not sold in Australia. That manufacturer has a different brand for the local market and a different brand for export markets. So, one way is to also to see how you can spread your risks in different markets, because certain times your market, for example, if you are a big manufacturer of certain products in Greece, say olives, you might find today Greece is consuming less of many things because of all the crisis that had overcome it. But it could be possible that emerging markets like India and China offer new possibilities. A good way for us to also develop economies of scale is by going to new markets across the globe, and therefore one also can expect to have an increase relatively in the profitability. And sometimes, in many cases actually, you can stretch a strong brand like Apple has done, stretching the Apple brand to so many countries. Nike has done. So several companies are there. In fact, today the very surprising thing is many companies, if you take quintessential American brands like Levi's or Coca-Cola or what have you, actually have more of their revenues coming from outside of America. Similarly, for most Japanese companies, well-known Japanese companies like Toyota or Sony, significantly more of their sales comes from outside of Japan, which is a small country, rather than from within Japan. They are considered Japanese companies by origin, but it's possible today that the scale and nature of operations is significantly bigger outside Japan.